Here we go. Stocks by the numbers. Welcome back. And SoundHound AI Incorporated, SOUN on the NASDAQ, comes out with earnings today. After market close, we can see big miss on the EPS side. They cited, obviously, the recent acquisition and whatnot. We can see another beat on the revenue side. And you're seeing a positive reaction in the stock. It pulled back here to the low nines, dropped down to 910 today, 921 on the close. Obviously, after hours, we're back up right around that $10 range, up about 8%. Revenue comes in slightly over $34.5 million on estimates of $33.7 million. And if we back up the last couple of quarters, this is why I'm saying that with these small up-and-coming companies, and again, not just SoundHound, also something similar would be like ASTS, right? Right now, in my opinion, I do think it's overvalued. I do know that they do stay in the headlines and they are receiving some positive news cycles lately. So I appreciate the fact that the stock has not completely cratered. But my point is, when ASTS, when you really want to start to see that growth over the years, what they're going to be looking at are the contracts signed and the actual revenue coming in. And then just like with SoundHound, when we go back, okay, estimates up to 17, they post about 17. All right, so we just kind of keep the stock hanging out. And then you can see the next quarter, we drop estimates down to 10, they come in 11.5, right? Estimates jump up to 13, they come in at 13.5. So now we bump up estimates above 20 million. We make it 23, they hit 25. And now for this quarter, I think, in my opinion, just makes it look that much better, right? This is the snowball effect, the growth that we were speculating about 8 months ago, 12 months ago when we were originally looking at the stock. And now again, you can see we jumped up to the milestone above that 30 million mark and the company posts 34.5 million. So even though the EPS side has not been stellar, as I said many months ago, in my opinion, revenue is going to trump EPS. And that's basically what I believe you're seeing here. But they also guided pretty positively as well. So let's get into what the company actually said. Record fourth quarter revenue up 101%, exceeding 34.5 million, raises full year outlook. Revenue rises. This time last year, 17 million. Now we're at 35. So again, you saw 101%. Revenue essentially doubled over the last 12 months. Analysts were expecting 33. For 2025, the AI company is projecting 157 to 177 million in revenue. Analysts were looking, as you see, kind of towards the lower end of this new range now, was about 165 million in change. So the mid of this range now is about 167. And again, they've been slightly coming in above estimates by like a million and change, 2 million, as we saw over the last couple of quarters. So if mid-range is like 167, I'd probably say maybe they'd hit like 170 plus for 2025, which again is just only a handful of mil above the estimate, but obviously raising that guidance is a very good sign. SoundHound CEO says AI can benefit in strong or weak economy. Yes. CEO says AI not feeling impact from tariffs. Yes, no, they shouldn't really. SoundHound doesn't foresee impact from Trump tariffs, which of course is a good sign because as we're seeing with a lot of companies, whether it's a lot of these packaged food stocks or recently we saw something like Honest, right? A lot of people might be jumping ship saying, they look fine, but we got these tariffs coming. Like I don't even want the headache. So you have people jumping out just on the news of these tariffs coming, and to put those concerns to rest, obviously that's a nice little feather in the cap for this AI stock. Guiding for revenue to potentially double in 2025, regardless of how incoming tariffs from the Trump administration affect the economy. Their main business, selling AI customer services to other companies, hasn't felt any impact from tariffs so far. SoundHound products are largely manufactured in the U.S. or wherever they are sold. If the tariffs dampen business activity more broadly, the CEO says SoundHound can weather the storm. Quote, whether the economy is good, people invest in innovation, and that brings them to SoundHound. When the economy is not good, they invest in automation and cost saving, and that also brings them to SoundHound. So kind of the best of both worlds, whether it's good or it's bad out there. The company is also sitting on a healthy balance sheet, he said, with almost 20 million in cash and no debt. Which, of course, is a good thing. Revenue above estimates. Adjusted loss was below. But they speak about the one-time loss, I believe. Hold on, let's find it. CEO calls Nvidia news sell-off, quote, overreaction. Yeah, I mean, in general, I said my 2 cents. I feel that Nvidia's kind of overvalued. I mean, are they impressing on the growth side and on the earnings side? Absolutely, of course. You can't deny that. You really can't deny it. But again, 3 trillion, 3.5 trillion market cap for a company bringing in what, like 80, 100 billion? I mean, again, imagine if 50, 60 even percent of the stocks across the board traded at those beefed up valuations. I mean, half the people watching this video right now would probably be able to retire next week or something. So that's the only small beef I have with Nvidia, was that I was afraid they were pumping it too high too quick. And if you buy in near the highs, any market correction, or as I mentioned, if the NASDAQ and tech start selling off, if you're heavy in tech, you bought near the highs, you might be kind of screwed, and now you're kind of locked in at a higher price, and now you're just kind of in wait and see mode, waiting for that recovery. But hopefully none of you are too exposed. But yeah, I don't know. Again, like a slow pullback to a key level on a stock like Nvidia, to me, makes sense. To drop it after positive results does kind of seem weird. But as we mentioned with other large tech stocks as well, if you recall, we were looking at even like Google, we checked in a few times after they reported earnings, larger tech companies like Microsoft, and even when the company would post a decent quarter, we would see a drop, 2, 3, 4%, right? Wasn't anything too crazy, but technically you got some good news for the most part, but we're seeing a negative result. And that kind of throws people for a loop. And in my eyes, I think that's basically to just kind of scare out and weed out the day traders, obviously, who, bought calls going into earnings, so they dropped the stock, But more importantly, after the drop, you see that soon after it bottoms out and it does begin to climb, and slowly but surely gets back to where it was, or gets higher and makes new 52-week highs, even though looking back after earnings, they initially dropped it. Right? You understand? So in my opinion, Nvidia, again, I really don't think it's going to tank too much just instantly like that, but we know that any announcement could be made. And again, we spoke about how high the major indexes have been climbing over the last couple of years. And even when we got news that everyone was hoping rates were going to be cut and then they were delayed, or inflation came in above estimates, right? Whatever the data was coming out, it didn't seem to matter, and the markets just kept going up. So now that's what I mean. This is why I said, in my opinion, I raised the concern that potentially under Trump, that first year, believe it or not, we may see markets drop down and just kind of cool off and hang out. Even though you might anticipate and expect the growth, you might not see it because it might already be factored in, believe it or not. But again, it's not necessarily factored in based on policies that he's implementing. We just overpumped it. And that's why I say stocks just can't go up and up. And sometimes you have these pauses. Again, a lot of people out there as well are also kind of in agreement with me, saying that we really should have like a 10-15% market correction. So you have to keep that in mind. In the same period earlier, AI posted adjusted, okay. Quote, it was a record quarter, strongest quarter in our history. Yes, beautiful. SoundHound expects, yep. Previous guidance was 155 to 170. Okay, so they raised it by about 2 million on the top and bottom range. Shares up. January, company unveiled in-vehicle voice commerce platform. Yep. Order food from your car. That will be a monetizable moment. Excuse me. We share the revenue with the OEMs, with car makers. So they will be more incentivized to adopt our solution. Yep. Okay, yep. Overreaction on Nvidia. He added that while he can't speak to Nvidia's investment philosophy, quote, our impression is that they're not investing to hold public company shares. They're investing to create an ecosystem and to create an alliance, and those benefits have already been seen and validated in terms of Nvidia's investment in SoundHound. Interesting statement. Yeah, full year revenue was almost 85 million, as you see, 85% year over year growth. Fourth quarter gross margin of almost 40%. Full year GAAP gross margin of 48.9%. Fourth quarter adjusted EBITDA loss 16.8 million. Full year adjusted EBITDA loss of about 62 million. Collaborations with over 30% of the top 20 quick service restaurant brands, including Burger King UK and Whataburger. We're in the healthcare sector now, as we spoke about. Partnerships with Duke Health, Wellstar Health System. Automotive sector, expanding adoption with leading EV manufacturers like Lucid Motors and Tog. AI solutions for multi-location retail brands, including Torrid and Planet Fitness. Added one of the largest electric utilities in the United States to its portfolio. Signed a contract with the city of Coral Springs and federal government agencies. Expanding in South America, with Telefonica, and scaling with a major European broadcaster. Customers include BNP Paribas and 70% of the top 10 global financial institutions. They partnered with EXL, expanding presence with customers like Transamerica, and they're enhancing customer experiences for companies like Aeromexico and Resorts World Las Vegas. So again, as we said, we were going to see the branching out across multiple sectors because this software can technically be adopted almost anywhere. SoundHound AI has been the forefront. Okay. Company partnered with Record to develop audio-visual AI for emergency vehicle technology. Yes, we spoke about that as well. Able to contact help and whatnot through the AI voice assistant, even if there is no network connectivity, which could obviously, if you're in that situation, stuck between a rock and a hard place, you're going to thank your lucky stars that you have that technology in the vehicle. CEO highlighted the company's breakthrough year, emphasizing major customer wins, agreed, expanded partnerships, and groundbreaking generative AI innovation. CFO noted the company's strong year-end position and accelerating momentum. So, all in all, pretty good. Pretty darn good across the board. Obviously, slight boost in revenue guidance, definitely is the cherry on top of the sundae. But again, in general, just the fact that the revenue is consistently growing, you see them consistently, as they said, expanding the partnership, signing new clients, branching out into all different sectors. This is, in my opinion, this is basically the recipe for success. And again, if you really want to be a stickler and look at the numbers, you can say, yeah, they're operating at a loss. They brought in, 85 million. The market cap right now is like 3.5 billion, I think, and change. So yeah, of course, if you look at the numbers, you could definitely make the argument it could be viewed as overvalued. So you have to understand, again, I always say, these stocks that have been pumped up, and SoundHound technically is still kind of pumped up. If the markets do correct, if we do continue to sell off, something like this can continue to drop. So you could potentially see like that $8 level. We'll look at the trend lines in a second. But I just want you to understand the risks involved. But long term, in my opinion, again, I think we can see the writing on the wall. We think ultimately every business will have AI customer service. It's becoming a mandate. Sales doubled. The outsized loss stems from a jump in the fair value of its contingent liabilities related to acquisitions the company made last year. Those deals included milestone-based earnouts, that were paid in shares. So as SoundHound stock price increased ninefold over the course of 2024, its liabilities surged by almost 220 million. So technically, of course, that is a negative. In my opinion, I think in the long scheme of things, it's going to be a slight speed bump. Just a slight speed bump. Adjusting for that and other one-time items, the loss was 5 cents a share. Analysts were expecting an adjusted loss of 8 cents a share. So again, stripping out those incurred liabilities due to the acquisitions, the company did kind of report slightly less on the loss side, which again, we spoke about with the way the spillover of revenue works and increasing the cash flow, right? The more and more money and revenue your business is able to generate, eventually you're going to get to a point where the losses are less and less and less, and soon you're very close to break even, and then you're break even, and then you're in the black, and now you're profitable, and you see an even greater surge in share price, right? So that's why, again, as we know, could it remain volatile from quarter to quarter over the next 3 to 6 months, depending on what they report? Of course. But over the next couple of years, I do still really like this one. The end goal is to have drivers using the AI voice assistants in their cars to order from SoundHound-powered restaurants. The company has already unveiled a demo of voice commerce and is working to take it live in vehicles. So it just seems like, they just keep doing basically what you need them to do. And yeah, this is basically just recapping all that. Looking at the chart real quick, you can see, so the stock was down here in the low 9s, and now we bounced right here to like 990. So we could potentially have a retracement back up here maybe to the fib and kind of meet up with this 20-day. And that would be at about like 1160 and change. But again, these other trend lines, this is what I wanted to point out, because I know we pulled back to about 860 the other day, and now you've seen the slight bounce going into earnings. And if we do happen to drop down, this trend line right here is looking at the very low 8s. And of course, this trend line cutting down and coming across would be like here. So you can see that would be like 770, right? So you still have the potential to have it pull back and actually break support momentarily if markets begin to stay big red, and especially if tech sells off, right? And because this stock was also so closely tied to NVIDIA, even though in my opinion, it really shouldn't have been. I mean, technically it was good news finding out about the investment from NVIDIA in SoundHound, of course. So I understand why that was one of the main drivers for the pop. But again, the overall business is doing phenomenally well, in my opinion. So this rise, people want to talk about NVIDIA. In my opinion, this is the business right here. This is the business. But again, if markets and traders want to tie this to NVIDIA, and now we're seeing NVIDIA is potentially kind of in sell-off mode, that's why I'm just saying, understand the risks involved. Not really risks involved, but understand the volatility, I should say, that could potentially be coming. And you could possibly have a little run up here and then reject and come down. And all of a sudden, you're in the low 8s. All of a sudden, you're at like 7.5. So again, in my opinion, there are some key levels to watch to the downside as well, even though technically it was a good earnings report. RSI was down here. Look at this, in the low 30s. Okay, so now we pop back up like here. It could kind of tighten and bounce around, believe it or not, and maybe form an ascending triangle, and then potentially pop up back to 11 plus. So that's something to keep an eye on as well, possibly over the next couple of days. You have to see how it how it trades and how it looks in the candles. But also we were talking about a potential pullback to that trend line in the low 8s. You can see here on the daily 200-day moving average 812. Bottom Bollinger Band 783. Right? So that's why, again, you could potentially make the argument for an up move or a down move, but if it does start to sell off, I just want you to understand why it could be happening and where it could potentially go. But if it does form that bullish pattern, possibly like we're predicting, then yeah, if we see a pop back up to 11s and markets aren't too volatile, you could possibly see a slow run up back to the mid Bollinger Band. You could get back to about 12.5 potentially before, again, you can see how we top out, right? So we draw a trend line down. You can see that would meet up like right there, right? So this could get up to 12 and change and then run into that resistance and then to kind of slowly start to pull back down. So yeah, you have to take it day by day. But again, if you're holding this for the long term, in my opinion, it's really not a big deal. RSI on the weekly, slightly below 46. And we can also see the 50-day moving average on the weekly, 787, right? So again, between like 770 and like 810, you do have multiple levels. So even though we have a good report and we could see a run-up maybe for a day or two, you could potentially see kind of a flash, quick, short-term rejection, and we can pull the stock down to the higher single digits. But hey, if we liked it at 9, if we liked it at 11, and it pulls back to 7.5, you should know what that means. Yeah, MACD heading down. Okay. And we'll see also if we do continue to pull back, it might quickly, it might quickly flatten and begin to spike up right back. So you might see like the flash down to 8, high 7s, and then immediately have it pull back up and close that day at like 860 or something, right? We've seen days like that from SoundHound. So something like this, again, could it technically be viewed as overvalued? Yes. In the numbers, yes, absolutely. But as we know, we recently broke the stock up and out to about $25 a share. On the news from Nvidia and the better quarters, you can see the stock was holding like 5-ish, broke up, got to like 6, 7, 8. So that's why even here at 9, if you begin to piece in here at 9 and then it pulls back to like 808, add a couple of shares where you can, bring that average down, you know. And in my opinion, over the long term, I really do believe it should be fine. And I'm also curious to see any future price target adjustments that we may see from some of these institutions, from some of these analysts. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But that's pretty much it. I'll end it there. So once again, Stocks by the Numbers, I want to thank you for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually pretty quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, and they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.